Welcome to the BSMS Virtual Open Day presentation. My name is Darren and I am the Head of Admissions, the Admissions Tutor at the medical school. So I'm going to give the presentation. Take about 30 minutes or so to get through it. The session is being recorded and the recording will be sent to you to the email that you signed up with. Please, if you've got any questions, use the Q&A box rather than the chat, okay? So if you can use the question and answer box and put your questions there, we'll go through those at the end of the presentation. Don't put questions in the chat because we won't look at the chat. We're only going to look at the question and answer box. And one of the things about that is you don't have to repeat questions. So if someone's put a question in already that you want to ask, all you have to do is vote for that one, put a thumbs up next to it, and it goes up the list. So that way we can see lots of people want to ask the same question. So there's no need to repeat questions that have already been typed into that box. Right, let's make a start. So welcome to the presentation. BSMS, Brighton Sussex Medical School, as you can see on the slide, is an equal partnership between the universities of Brighton, Sussex, and the local NHS trusts. We started in 2003, so the next academic year from September, we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary. There's our ethos statement. I'm not going to read that out. You can read that. I'll give you a few seconds to read that. And I guess the most important bit there really is that bottom couple of lines, the school's commitment to equality and diversity. So that's a policy that revolves around everything that we do, from selecting students to how we teach, to our staffing, and obviously to how we practice medicine and to how we treat patients in the NHS. So you probably know that selection for medicine is competitive. It's not getting less competitive. You can see from the numbers there. When I say it's not getting less, and numbers have gone down slightly in October, but you know, when you've still got nearly 22,000 people applying to study medicine in the UK, that's stiff competition. You can see there that we are quite competitive. For 2023 entry, we had just over 1,400 applications for 193 places. And we interviewed about a third of the people who applied to us. So you might wonder, why should you choose BSMS? Well, there's all sorts of tables that you can look at, all sorts of league tables that will demonstrate what we're good at and what we're not so good at. The one we tend to use and to quote quite regularly is the National Student Survey. So the National Student Survey, the NSS, is completed each year by graduating students from every degree course in the country. And they're all asked to give anonymous feedback on various aspects of their course. So that could be facilities, marking, assessment, teaching quality, all sorts of things. And you can see from the slide that from 2012 up to 2021, BSMS was consistently getting plus 90% overall satisfaction. So overall satisfaction for everything we do, everything about us as a school. And in 2017, we came top with 99% overall satisfaction. And that was top with everything that was surveyed in the NSS, all courses and all universities. 2022 had a slight dip, as you can see, quite a big dip actually, not a slight dip, down 81%. Overall satisfaction, still reasonably good. 81% of our graduates satisfied with what we do, but you know, not as good as it had been, and we won't make excuses for that. The only thing we do know for certain is that last year's graduates were halfway through their first proper clinical years, year 3 of the course, when COVID and lockdown hit. So the back end of their education was severely impacted by the pandemic. So that will undoubtedly have had an impact on how they saw their time with us. But previous years with over 90% overall satisfaction. We think that suggests we do things right. If our graduates are telling the world that, we must be getting things right. So other reasons that you might want to choose BSMS. So let's have a think about what we do. We have a strong emphasis on early clinical skills. We have an integrated systems approach to how we deliver the curriculum. So integrated means we integrate those clinical skills early, integrate them throughout the first 2 years. So it's not a traditional preclinical and clinical setup. We still use some cadaveric dissection to teach some of our anatomy, along with new technologies such as imaging. We've got a wide variety of teaching methods. We've got strong student-selected components that run through the first couple of years. They're only small bits of the course, but there are small elements that you get a little bit of choice. Even though we've got a cohort each year of about just over 200, we still try and have as much small group teaching as we can, and we try to keep an environment of friendly and supportive so that you feel that you're part of the BSMS family and feel that you can fit in and that we're there to look after you. Part of that is also helped by regular opportunities for you to feedback about the course and for us to feedback about you. And we still think, despite the fact you're doing projects wherever you go, we have a very broad range of options when it comes to choosing your research project. So this is how the course looks. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. Phase 1, which is year 1 and 2, based predominantly on campus at Falmer, just outside of Brighton, mainly on the University of Sussex site, but also on the University of Brighton site, which is just across the road. And the picture in that the picture of the building there is the medical school teaching building on the University of Sussex campus. Phase 2, predominantly, as I say, it's clinical. It's at the Royal Sussex County Hospital in the centre of Brighton, or the Princess Royal Hospital in Haywards Heath. And then the final year, which is Phase 3, will be mainly on regional rotations in various hospitals around the southeast. Phase 1's timetable looks like this. You can see the first module there. In year 1 is the foundation of health and disease. That gets everybody up to speed, everyone from different backgrounds up to speed, ready for, after the winter break, coming back to heart, lungs and blood, your first proper module that focuses on a system of the body. So that's all around the thoracic region. And when you come back in after the winter break, in that second term of year 1, be prepared for a jump. You go immediately from first year undergraduate level work to second year undergraduate graduate level work. You can see that running through the year is clinical and community practice, plus personal and professional development, which runs throughout the whole course. At the end of the year, we've got a knowledge test, and then you move into second year, you can see again, clinical and community practice, personal and professional development, 3 more systems, and then before you get to your knowledge test at the end of the year, there's an OSCE, which is the objective structured clinical examination, which tests your clinical skills. Phase 2, year 3, as I said, it's predominantly in the hospital setting. You can see you've got your rotations of medicine, surgery, and elderly medicine and psychiatry. You've got the SBM, which is the science behind, oh, sorry, don't know why we went backwards there. We've got SBM, which is the science behind the medicine you'll see in your clinical setting. And a big therapeutics module. The clinical and community practice at the beginning is getting you ready and set up for working in a clinical environment. And then again, at the end of the year, you've got another OSCE and another knowledge test. Year 4, you've got your placement. Sorry, year 3. Oh dear, sorry, I'm losing control of my slides. Sorry. So year 3 placements, medicine, surgery, and elderly medicine and psychiatry. You can see all the various aspects that you would do there in each one. Okay, and then we can see here on the map where you might do some of your placements. We're right across the southeast there, up as far as Crawley, right on the Surrey borders, out to Chichester, Midhurst on the Hampshire border, and then out along the coastline, east coastline to Hastings and beyond. So at the end of year 3, there's an option to intercalate if you wish. That's where you take a year out to study another degree, the final year of a BSc or an MSc, if you so wish. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. In year 4, your placements will be GP placements. And then year 5, you've also got Red Hill, which crosses the border into Surrey. So if intercalation, as I just briefly mentioned, is an opportunity to take that final year of a BSc or to do an MSc in 1 year, you'll join the cohorts of those courses, do all of have their teaching and do their assessments, and then hopefully graduate with an extra degree and then come back and rejoin BSMS as a 4th year. That's optional. We'll give you more information about that near the time. This is what year 4 looks like. Specialist rotations that you can see listed there. You've got your IRP, your research project, and you've also got your personal professional development. Again, an OSCE and a KT at the end of the year, and before moving on into 5th year. The research projects, as I say, we're pretty proud of how many we have on offer. There's lots of opportunities to do projects around clinical work, educational, community, lab-based, and occasionally, if you can find someone to supervise you, you might even be able to do your own idea for your research project. Year 5 is the business end of the course. So this is the bit where you're just getting ready to graduate and become a doctor. You could often think about it as unpaid work because you're put into practice in a clinical setting, all the things you've been learning. There's still teaching taking place. There's still stuff that you need to learn. You've got your regional attachments, which will take place in Chichester, Worthing, Haywards Heath, or Red Hill or Brighton. You've got your GP placements, and you've got your elective practice, which comes after finals. Finals are now called the MLA. That's has been introduced by the Medical Schools Council, the General Medical Council, and that replaces finals. Previously, each medical school would do their own version of finals at different times of the year. Now, all graduates take the same exam at the same time. Before you finally graduate, we have Foundation 0, where you go out and do specific learning on placement, and then come back for 1 day a week to do some symposium to enhance your learning. And we have the elective, where you go off anywhere you like that's not Brighton Hove for 4 weeks to, well, 6 weeks, actually 6 weeks to practice medicine and enhance your skill set. So lots of assessment and feedback opportunities. There you go. There's lots of things there. Knowledge tests, essays, OSCEs, posters, lots of opportunities for you to feedback to us as well. When you graduate, you'll go into the world of work as a junior doctor, FY1, your foundation year 1. You then move into foundation year 2, and then you move into your training pathways. We mentioned this just so you appreciate how long the journey is from starting medical school to becoming the type of doctor that you hope to be. But first of all, you've got to get in, haven't you? So let's have a quick look at what we do and how we do things at BSMS. I'm going to talk A-levels because that's the standard route that people come in. That's the majority of our applicants will come with A-levels. Obviously, we take other entry for qualifications. So if you're coming as a graduate, it's a 2-1 in a science degree. And if you're coming with the IB, it's a grade 6. It's 36 points overall with a higher level grade 6 in biology and chemistry. Other qualifications, it'll be the equivalent to 3 A-levels at A-level. So 3 A-levels at A-level to include biology and chemistry. We do not worry too much about your GCSE profile. We do ask you to be literate and numerate. So we're looking at a grade 6 or a B if you've got the alpha grades, a grade 6 in maths and in English, and it could be English language or English literature. For October, we'll be using the BMAT for the last time. That's how at the moment we select for interview. We do not use the personal statement at all in any part of the process. I do not know what we're going to be using post BMAT. We still haven't had that conversation within the school. But in October, we'll be asking all our applicants to sit the BMAT, and we will use the BMAT score to select for interview. So basically we'll rank everyone according to their score and then take the top however many and invite them to interview. Interviews, we use the multiple mini interview. That's 5 mini discussions that each last 10 minutes. And any decisions we make, whether to offer you a place or to reject you, are based solely upon your interview and nothing else. Everything else is just to get you to the interview stage. So you can see there the average scores that you need to get an interview is 20.5. So you don't have to smash the BMAT, but you do need to do reasonably well. It's normally around 50–60% total score. We do use contextual data. That's part of our drive to widen access to medicine from non-traditional groups. What will happen there is if you meet our contextual data criteria, then you will receive a slightly reduced offer of AAB, and we'll accept a grade 5 in maths and English. And there's a list of the contextual data criteria that we use. So not a huge list, but you need to meet 2 of those to get the contextual data offer, unless you've been in automatic care, and then if you've been in local authority care, sorry, in which case you're automatically invited to interview. So that was a whistle-stop look at what we do at BSMS. So we'll have an opportunity now to do the Q&A. I shall just bring them up. Right, so the first question is, I understand application of graduates are welcome, but I wondered if BSMS is considering adding, I don't know. We're not considering adding a graduate entry course at the moment, no. At the moment, everyone who's a graduate comes in without advanced standing. Contextual data, I just advised on that and explained what that was with the list of what we do. Is there any more questions that anyone has? Do you accept any third subjects at A-level? Yeah, anything you like. We don't mind what you present with. We have 10 places for international students. We don't accept BTECs, no. Do we do dissections ourselves? Yes, you do. That's part of your learning. You will do dissections. You will cut up a cadaver. Yes, that's part of the learning. So you need to think carefully, actually, about that. If dissection is something you don't like the idea of, if you don't like the idea of cutting up a dead body, then you probably need to think long and hard about whether or not BSMS is the right place for you to study. Do you allow students to reapply? Yeah, of course you can reapply if you want to. If you haven't been successful, then you can reapply. What score do international students need in academic? Internationals are the same. It's the standard offer for everybody. If it's not A-levels, it would be the equivalent. And for BMAT, yeah, you've just got to do the BMAT. You're just considered in a different pool. You're just considered in the same pool as the other international students, rather with the home students. So again, it'd be the highest number of people that, however many people score highly, will get through. So there's no actual cut-off score. We interview about 75 students, so the top 75 BMAT scores will get an interview if you're an international. No other criteria for international students. It's the same for everyone else. Is there any other alternatives if you don't get the required A-level grades? I don't understand what you mean by that. If you don't get the grades, you don't get in. So if you want to be a bit more specific with that question, do you want to type it in and we'll come back to that? If the A-level main results are lesser than the predicted grades, no, if you don't get your prediction, you won't get in. So you have to, your offer will be 3 A's. If you don't get that, you will be rejected. What's the last of the 8 placements you do in year 4? It was hidden slides. I'll have to go back to that. Sorry, it's on the internet. If you can't find it, I'll go back to that, see if I can find it in a minute. Bear with me. And I shall see. So your placements are you've got specialist rotations, which are dermatology, pediatrics, oncology, hematology and palliative care, obs and gynae, infectious disease, HIV and health protection, neurology and neurosurgery, musculoskeletal medicine and surgery. Those are your placements in year 4. Right, okay, sorry. Let's go to the next one. Are there any opportunities for week semesters abroad? No, we have no partnerships with any international institutions. So, you'll be doing all of your degree course in the UK. Does BSMS look at EPQs? No, we don't look at EPQs. We don't give any credit to them. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do one. They can be useful. You never know. You might do something in your EPQ that will enhance your answers in the interview. You might be able to draw upon your learning from your EPQ, but we don't actually give any credit to them. You accept any resits of exams. Okay, if you drop 1 grade in your A levels, so if you drop 1 grade below, so if you get one of your A's as a B, you can resit one of your A levels, but no more than that. How many seats are available? 193 for UK, 10 for international. No, we do not use PBL. We don't use PBL. No, we're not a UCAT institution, so we don't consider UCAT scores. The acceptance ratio, what's the ratio of acceptance for home versus international? It's irrelevant. We have 193 places for UK and 10 for internationals. We can't use any of our international places for UK and vice versa. So the ratio of acceptance is an irrelevance. I've just said we don't consider the EPQ, so doing the EPQ will not change the entry requirements. I'm hoping that we'll have a student join us shortly so they can do the question on student life. The personal statement is not looked at. Like, are there any preferences for work experience and extracurriculars? Okay, I think I understand what you've written, although it's poorly written. Are there any preferences? No, we don't have preferences for work experience and extracurricular. You need to demonstrate you have an insight into medicine. And that can come from all sorts of places. It might come from work experience and extracurriculars. We don't specify anything about that. Again, what you do extracurricular, you might be able to draw upon as part of your the interview process. We're joined by a student. Do you want to come off and say hello and just introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Manal Hill. I'm one of the 4th years at Brighton and Sussex Medical School. Nice to see you all. I mean, I can't see everyone at the moment, but nice to meet you all.
Brilliant. Thanks, Manal. So I'm going to throw you straight in the deep end with questions. It's the top there. Everyone's been voting it up. What is student life like in Brighton, and how do students travel to different hospitals and accommodation? So if you want to pick that one up, that'd be great.
Yep. So I think, surprisingly, I hadn't planned to move to Brighton for uni, but I was quite surprised by how good the student life is in Brighton. I think the statistics say that it's quite predominantly a student-led city, so it's quite student-friendly in that sense. There's a lot of areas that students tend to live in outside of the university accommodation as well. There's a good nightlife in Brighton, so it's quite good for students in that sense. There's a lot of extracurriculars to do outside of uni as well, suited to students. And because it's such a student-led kind of city, there's a lot of useful deals and things like that in the city around. And I'd say one other thing that's really good about it is the transport, which makes student life quite easy. So the buses are quite good, just like London and stuff. In terms of travel, yeah, so I think travel, you do have to travel quite a bit to kind of placements and things. So in the first kind of 2 years where you're doing less placement than third year, you tend to get placement. If your placement is quite far, then BSMS might organize taxis for you, which would probably start as a journey from the med school building, and then you would go from there. Otherwise, it's kind of, if it's in the vicinity of Brighton and Hove, then you tend to make your own journey there. And most of us tend to use the bus or trains, which tend to be quite easy to utilize. And you also do tend to get refunds on your tickets and things as well. So I'd say travel is not that hard in the South. It's mainly based on trains and things.
Thank you, Manuel. Yeah, it's also worth bearing in mind that the city of Brighton and Hove is it encourages the use of public transport and cycling. And you can, once in the city centre, you can walk to most places quite easily. It's not a huge city. It's not a sprawling city. We would say to any student coming to study in Brighton and Hove, think twice about bringing a car. It's very difficult to park. It's expensive to park. And you'll probably get around the city centre quicker on foot, on a bike, or on the bus than you would in a car. So getting around is quite good. But when it comes to placements, we make sure we give you guidance on the best way to get there and reimburse you. So it's not normally an issue. Okay, predicted grades considered for the interview. No, you have to get the predicted grades, and then then we look at the BMAT score. So the BMAT score is what will get your interview or not. If I get a grade that's higher than my predicted score, would you offer me a place? No. No, your offer of your place is based upon your interview, not on your predicted grades or what you get finally. The offer is standard. If you're an A-level student, it's 3 A's at A-level. If you get 3 A stars, well done. That means you've done very well. It won't change anything though. And I've just said what the typical offer is. It's 3 A's at A-level, to include biology and chemistry. Other than in fourth year, if you wanted to carry out your own research towards a publication, would this be something that the staff would support within reason? I don't know of anyone that does that. Everyone's very busy. There are occasionally some summer opportunities to do research, but that tends to happen in the earlier years before you get into clinical years, and it gets really, really busy and you don't have a lot of spare time other than the time you've allocated for your IRP. Staff I don't know of any staff that would support anyone else doing any other research unless it's a paid opportunity. But Manu, have you come across anyone that might have done that? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I can add to that. So, staff are quite busy at the med school itself, but there's a lot of opportunities to do research with clinicians in the hospital because they're quite proactive in research. So you can do that kind of more in your clinical years when you're being exposed to doctors. You can talk to them about what they're doing. And I've certainly seen some people do that kind of third year onwards, other than their IRP. So it's still possible. But that being said, you are quite busy. So
yeah. Do you know the success ratio by any chance? I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. The success ratio for what? You need to be a bit more specific for that if you want an answer. Can I take a gap year and get some work experience on the pie? Of course you can. Yeah. If you want to take a gap year, that's absolutely fine. Lots of applicants will take a gap year. It helps in all sorts of ways, not just with getting work experience. You mature. You change. It gives you other experiences as well, and actually becoming increasingly relevant for a lot of people with the world we're now living in. Is it gives some people will use the opportunity to earn some money and and have some money in the bank ready for when they start university, because it's not a cheap process. And, the cost of living crisis is going to probably get worse before it gets any better. So, lots of people will now, we've had a few deferral requests over the last few weeks, and people who have got offers who've realised they need to take a year extra to earn some money so they can afford to study. So, yeah, of course, you can take a gap year and then apply. That's not a problem at all. Does everyone that achieves the minimum academics move? Yeah, I've mentioned that. If you've got the predicted grades, then you'll go on to the BMAT. We'll look at your BMAT score. Yes, if you're educated overseas, English not your native language, then you will need to do IELTS. It is a mandatory requirement. Despite good BMAT scores, can someone be rejected just for not doing well in the interview? Yes. BMAT score is irrelevant. It just gets you to interview. Any decisions that are made around whether or not you receive an offer is based solely on your interview. If I apply with 3 A stars predicted and that with 3 A's, am I still considered? Yes, because our standard offer is 3 A's at A level, not 3 A stars. So you will be offered 3 A's regardless of your predictions of 3 A stars. We're rattling through the questions. I'm just going to say before I get on to the next one, if you have any student-related questions, get them into the box there so Manahel doesn't sit here all night twiddling her thumbs. Because once we're done, once we get to the end of the question, we'll be going because I've got dinner to eat. So if I get AAC in the final A-levels, will there be any program to enroll in order to be considered for that next academic year? No, you'll just be rejected and you will have to find another entry level. You won't be able to come as a resit candidate because you've dropped more than 1 grade in your third. If you've got AAB, you could apply as a resit candidate. But AAC, you wouldn't be able to reapply to us. We've covered the work experience. You don't need any work experience as such. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. We don't specify work experience at all. You do need an understanding and an insight into medicine and the role of the doctor. Where you get that from, we don't mind, but you may well get it from work experience. That's where most people get it from. And that could include virtual work experience. There's lots of work experience programs out there. We do one. It's on our website that's free of charge. You can do that and get some, hopefully some useful experiences. What do you look for in a student in the interviews? An all-round, someone who's all-round, they've got an insight into medicine, as I keep repeating. They understand the values of the NHS. They may have they'll have a science curious brain, be up to date with what's going on in the world, mainly in the world of science and health developments. But occasionally, if there's a really big story, then we're not going to ask it, but we could very well ask someone what they think the cost of living crisis, what the impact that might have on patients' health. Or the NHS, very relevant. The two are linked. So, but yeah, we're looking for people with a good all-round skill set. We don't have a one-size-fits-all template for the students that we're looking for. There's lots of other subjects for intercalation. The ones on the slide were just the ones that we have on offer. We do have some partner institutions that we work with, other universities. And did you intercalate or have you gone right through?
Went right through.
Okay. Yeah. Do you remember the intercalation talk and what was on offer? Was there any psychology or anything like that? Can you remember?
You mean for BSMS itself?
It won't be by us, but I wonder if it's with one of the other medical schools. We've got partnerships with something I don't deal with, intercalation. So
I think psychology is on offer for intercalation, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it might. Yes, so it might be on offer. I don't know, but again, there's no. Even if I said it was or it wasn't, that could all change by the time you get there. If you guys are applying in October, it's quite a few years off, and things do change. Things on offer now might not be on offer then, and vice versa. Do you recommend doing a part-time job? I'm going to guess that you mean while studying rather than right now. Let's Anna will answer that one, and if she's got any insights into that.
I think with the current situation, I mean, I would recommend any student doing a part-time job. But with that being said, you're quite busy in medical school, so you have to find kind of a job that would suit your exam timetable. I think the first kind of 2 years are a bit easier to do a job, perhaps like on weekends and things and in the evenings. But I think afterwards, when you get into clinical placements, you're quite a lot on placement and you have less time, and you also have to juggle that with studying. So yeah, if you have time and you think you can balance it, then definitely at least in the first 2 years, if you think that will help.
Yeah, I mean, lots of students will work part-time. We've already mentioned the cost of living crisis, and everyone's finding it tough. Brighton is the most expensive the most expensive city to be a student outside of London, if you're going to be a student in the UK. It's not cheap. You've got your fees for a start. I know you can get loans, but you've got your own cost of living expenses, your accommodation expenses. It's not a cheap process. So a lot of students will get a part-time job, and it's easier to work part-time in the first year and the second year than it is in the third year and the fourth year and beyond, because you get busier and the demands placed upon you increase. So if you think you're going to need some money, it's advisable to do the part-time work in the first and second year and free up your time for study in the later years, and also try and get work for vacation time when you have opportunities to work full-time perhaps and just put some money in the bank. But you really do need to consider finances. It's something you can't take lightly. If an international student becomes a UK student middle of the course, would they get local fees? No. If you start as an international student, you finish as an international student. You can't change you might become a UK citizen in terms of the government, but you can't change your fee status. The status in which you are taken on board, your fees cannot change regardless of what happens. No, and a gap year will not affect your application. What's the accommodation like? Again, let's put this to Amanda here as a student. She can talk to you a little about accommodation.
Yeah, so I think you basically get accommodation for the first year in the university itself. And this can be based in the Sussex campus or the Brighton campus. And they tend to put the medical students together. So you'll be in the same building and flats as them. And you'll probably be sharing a flat with 5-6 other people. And the accommodation is quite good. It's cheaper compared to, renting in the subsequent years. And it includes, things like Wi-Fi and bills as well. So that's a bonus, and it's quite good quality. And I think they've added a lot of new buildings to the accommodation in the recent years. So it's quite modern, I'd say, as well. So it's good as well because you're close to people who have the same timetable as you, and so you can walk together and things. So I'd say it's quite good.
Okay, I'm just going through the questions. Thanks for that. There's a lot of repetition, folks. You're asking the same questions over and over again, so I am going to start getting really quite quick and blunt in some of these. No, you won't. We don't do clearing. You might get into medicine through clearing at another institution, but not BSMS. Already discussed EPQs. We don't look at them. This question, I'm not quite sure. What happens if your actual grades are not as high as your predicted grades, but better than entry requirements? We have a standard offer. I'm going to say this for the last time. I'm just going to delete all the other questions that are asking it. We have a standard offer of 3 A's at A level. You would have to be predicted 3 A's. Your offer will be 3 A's. You have to get 3 A's. If you get less than 3 A's, you'll be rejected. If you get better than 3 A's, it doesn't matter. You've met our standard offer. Accommodation from the uni. So I just mentioned there's on-campus accommodation the first year, in city centre for the rest of the years. If you're in the city centre, it's a 9-minute journey by train. Obviously, you've got to get to the train station, but it's 9 minutes on the train. Depending where you are, you can normally get to campus in about 30 minutes on the bus maximum. So I don't know if you'd agree with that, Manahil.
Yeah, I'd say around 35 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Next in-person open day will be June 2024. I've already discussed interviews and what we're looking for. process for allocation accommodation. We only get accommodation in the first year. When you accept your offer, you are sent the information about the accommodation that's available in the University of Brighton and the University of Sussex sites, and then you need to reply as soon as you can with your preference. The sooner you reply, the more chance you have of getting your preferred choice of accommodation. If you have a look on the website, it shows you all the accommodation that's available for BSMS students. How often do you see students involved in extracurricular like sport and other clubs, and how hard is it to balance study with these activities? Also, roughly how many hours do you spend doing self-study in an average day, weekdays, weekends, holidays for each year of study? Manuel, over to you.
So a lot of the extracurriculars for medical students are with other medical students because we have our own societies. So our sports is all, medical societies, and we have like specialties where we see other people. So I would say it's it's like a closely knitted community with other medical students, but you do see like other medical students in years above you or below you. But yeah, you can still join, the benefit of being in both universities of Brighton and Sussex is you can still join, the sports of the others if you wanted to, or attend their clubs. And that could be a way to kind of meet people from other kind of degrees and things. In terms of balancing study with these activities, because the societies that we mostly tend to attend are medical societies from BSMS itself, they tend to organize events suited to everyone's timetable. So it's much easier to balance that. In terms of hours doing self-study, I think it depends on an individual basis. Also tends to increase as the years go on. So in the first 2 years, you have a lot of time where you attend lectures and seminars. And you might have less self-study time, whereas as the years go on, there's more placement, there's less teaching, and there's more self-study. The amount of self-study you do also would probably increase around exam season, where it may be potentially up to 8-10 hours in a day, whereas in holiday time, some people do zero work, or some people might do 2 hours in a day just to keep their mind fresh. So it just depends, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that med students will find a way. We don't want to stop people doing the things they love doing, their extracurricular, their sport, and it's not healthy to stop. But you, as individuals, you will find the right way to balance it and the right way to fit things in. But with that, I don't know of any medical. I mean, I've been at the medical school since 2005, and I don't think I've ever met a student who said they have had to stop doing other things just to study. It's you'll find a way. You will find a way. So the BMAT cutoff for interview in 2022 was 20.5 overall. Some of these questions are making me chuckle. Why are some students rejected during interviews? Just not being good enough on the day. That doesn't mean to say they're not good enough at all, because interviews have a numerical score attached to them, and we total up the scores. Most people are rejected because there were a few people who did better than them, and they may have scored 1 point more in total than them. But we have to draw the line somewhere. We have a finite number of places on offer. It's very rarely that people are rejected because they are not very good. It's normally just because you just haven't been quite good enough, and on the day there were people who are slightly better than you. That's the main reason why folk are rejected. What do you look for when I've already told you about the interview and what we're looking for, and I've discussed this. If students whose first language is not English but have been educated in the UK, yes, you do have to do the IELTS. Would you recommend getting a job? Yeah, we just answered that one. Clinical work at the start of the medical school. Okay, let's use Vanna Hill's some of her experiences in her clinical teaching from year 1 onwards.
Yeah, so in the first 2 years, you do get a bit of clinical exposure. So you go to things like GPs and things throughout the year, which would be much less compared to, when you start in third year. In third year, right from the beginning, you start going to the hospitals, you start going to clinics. A lot of clinical work is mainly observing, especially in third year. So you go to ward rounds and you see what doctors do in their everyday life, and then you kind of get asked questions and you learn through that. And then as the years go on, you practice, skills and doing things, and getting more involved. And then you see different specialties in the hospital, and you just rotate around.
Brilliant, thank you. How is it to get private rental accommodation in Brighton after the first year? Again, from my experience, it's easy. That Brighton's a student-friendly city. There is an awful lot of student accommodation. I think I'll let Manhale talk to this in a second, but my experience of working with students is students only find it a problem if they leave it to the last minute.
Yeah.
If you give yourself enough time, start looking when you need to, make sure you look at a few places, get your act together, make sure you do it properly, you shouldn't have a problem. Don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Manhale.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a student-led city, you have like a lot of agencies as well that are looking, helping with students and things. So if you know the people you want to live with early on and you start looking early on, there's a lot of areas as well in Brighton that are quite student-oriented. So it's not difficult at all.
I think this one's for you as well. I think how would you prepare for? How did you prepare for interviewing? What was the interview process like for you?
So how I prepared. So I think I kind of just prepared by talking to myself in the mirror, which sounds very weird, but it's just a way for you to get confidence. And, if you think you struggle with, confidence in speaking to others, then asking people to ask you questions and practicing that way, or videoing yourself, answering certain questions that you think are likely to come up, and then kind of watching those videos back and seeing how you reacted to those questions. Just kind of do some background reading on science, on why you want to do medicine. I think there's a lot of online tools that give guidance on what kind of topics come up in interviews. So just practice that way. That's what I did.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think that a really good advice that do it in the mirror, because you might feel a bit self-conscious, but actually you're going to feel conscious about yourself when you're faced with an interviewer. So that's just not a bad way to get over that. And you can look at your body language and your stature and your demeanor, and not a bad bit of advice at all. And just practice. The questions that you answer don't have to have anything to do with medicine. Just get people to fire random questions at you. It's about how you think about the answer and what you say, and the content of your answer, rather than rather than being limited in your answer, how much can you add, how much can you embellish and add to your answer. So practice is the best way to do that. Roughly how much do halls cost compared to external accommodation? Halls, I think, are around about £170 a week now. It's on the website, you'll have to have a look, and I think there's a comparison to the private sector as well on the website. And what are you paying, if you don't mind?
So now I'm living outside. So as a house of two, we're paying about 8,000 a year. So I guess around 1,300 a month. Right. But you can get cheaper, you can get more expensive. It just depends on what you want. Yeah,
and that's really true, isn't it? Yeah, there's I won't say there's something to fit every budget, because that's not entirely true. But the range does. There is a reasonable spread in the range of rents. How do we perform the best in an interview? We've just spoken about preparing for that, so I'm not going to carry on with that one. Will our knowledge of A-level subjects be assessed in interviews, like biology, example? If we're going to ask science, the chances are there'll be a link to your A-levels. We're not going to ask you any scientific questions that we don't think you can't answer. That would be a waste of time. So yes, is the answer there. Is there a lot of independent learning compared to other medical schools? I don't know what other medical schools do. Why would I know that? And how much independent study do you do? Roughly a lot, I know, but roughly.
Yeah, I'd say, as I said earlier, as the years go on, you do more independent study. But I guess like from third year onwards, you'd say 60-70% would be independent study.
Thank you. No different criteria for graduates. If you're coming in with a BSc, you need to be predicted a 2-1, and you need to have got at least BBB at A-level. But apart from that, the criteria are no different at all. How do we prepare? Yeah, we've answered the question about how you prepare for an interview. Yeah, you'll be on both campuses at various points during your time with us. First couple of years predominantly on campus, predominantly on the Sussex campus, but you'll be on both campuses throughout your time, and you'll come back in third year, fourth year, and fifth year from time to time. No one will have to travel to us for the interview, because next year they will be virtual again. We'll be doing them via Zoom next year, so no one has to travel. Question for you, Emmanuel. What's the best part of being at BSMS? Have we got enough time to answer that one?
There's a lot of things. I would say the benefit of having two unis, so two campuses, we get to do a lot of array of things. The other thing would be being able to be in Brighton. I think it's a very fun city to be in as a student, and to top it all, it's quite a supportive university. So if you have any problems, you have a lot of people to go to for help. And because medical school can be quite a tough time for a lot of people, there's a lot of support available and you never feel alone. So I'd say that's kind of the three main for me.
Thank you. If you take a gap year, you'll be applying with your actual grades, not your predicted grades. If your son came to the UK in 20, he'll still be an international student, so he'll be paying international fees. So he will have to do the IELTS. We don't have a foundation year, so no requirements at all. Do you need the IELTS qualification on the day you apply or before the course starts? So if you need IELTS, it will be part of your offer. So if you've already got it and it's still valid, because they do have a expiry date, then that's fine. If you've got it and you meet our requirements, that's fine. We don't need to worry about that. If you haven't got it or you don't meet the requirements, it will be part of your offer. It'll be added onto your offer as well as your A-level or your IB. Do you have tips for the BMAT and how you prepared? Yeah, the best tip is to go on. I'll let Manny tell you what she did, but the best tip that we give from BSMS is to go onto the BMAT website. They have lots of preparation materials. You don't need to spend money on buying books. You don't need to spend money on courses to do it. Go on, look at their past papers, do their past papers. They have a document called the Assumed Knowledge Guide. So that's basically telling you what they expect you to know to do well in the BMAT for that year. So have a look at that. Anything you're not sure of, go away and learn it and remember it, and then you should be fine. That's the best suggestion we can give you. Manuel may have done the same or something extra, let her tell you.
Yeah, I would say my top tip would be do not spend too much money on online resources which advertises, courses and things. Just find your books in libraries and use those.
Great. So I've already told you, the slides told you that we use MMI, and I've already said that we're going to be online. If I do not pass one of my practical endorsements like biology, but I pass, well, you need to get the grade A in biology. If you don't get your grade A, but get the grade A in chemistry, you won't be coming. I'm not sure why I have to keep repeating this. The standard offer is 3 A's at A-level. You have to get 3 A's at A-level. Manny, when did you start preparing for the interview? Probably not till you got an invite.
Yeah, so I think when you get an invite, you don't have kind of too long to prepare. You might have like a month or so. So I think, yeah, as soon as you get an invite, I would say.
Yeah, okay. How did you find settling in, socializing and making friends?
Yeah, so as I said, I think because you're living with medics, socializing and settling in is quite easy. So, and there's also a lot of things that happen in Freshers Week to kind of get you comfortable and things.
Yeah, okay. So a question about the demographic of BSMS and proportion of ethnicities and diversity. I would say it's a reasonably diverse institution. We have quite a high proportion of students of colour, so we are reasonably diverse. The county of Sussex itself is not a particularly diverse place. It is diverse, but it's not hugely diverse. So I think if you took BSMS and compared it to the county of Sussex, we would be more diverse than the county itself. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah, cultural events. People. There's a lot of events that take place that celebrate different cultures and festivities, and lots of students are encouraged to experience those cultures and festivities when they, stuff they're not aware of, and lots of students do. Accommodations for fasting during Ramadan. Yeah, we make accommodation for fasting and prayers and things like that. So it's one of those things that you need to make us aware of, that you're going to be, observing Ramadan, and then we can make sure that things are put in place to assist you. If we don't know, we can't help you. That's the thing we say to any student with anything where they might need some adjustments. Any more you want to add to that around culture and observing of various
yeah, so BSMS, we have our own societies as well for different cultures. So like there's an Indian SOC, there's a Pakistani SOC, there's a African Caribbean society. So they hold a lot of events as well, which bring cultures together.
Brilliant. Thank you. Interviews will be January, February, March of next year. How many places given to the UK double admissions? I don't know is the answer. I know that we had quite a few applications. I know that some offers were made, but I don't know off the top of my head how many there were. If I'm applying after a gap year, when should I do the BMAT? So assuming that you want to apply for 2024 entry, you do the BMAT in October. If you're applying for entry after 2024, the BMAT won't exist, and we don't know what we're going to do yet. So can't really answer beyond that. If we don't get into medicine, what's the closest degree to medicine? I don't know. Well, there isn't I don't know, biomed. I don't know. That's something you've got to go away and look at yourself and investigate. Can't give you an answer to that one. There's something called practical endorsement. So I will be able to get an A star in biology without passing the breaks. So I'm medical state on the they need to be. No, we are just looking at your overall A level grade. That's all we're interested in. And why does one have to do IELTS after passing? Just are these exams not proof? No, an exam in English is not proof of English proficiency at all. So it's a requirement to do the IELTS. So if you are an international student, regardless of where you're educated, you have to do IELTS. You will not get a place if you don't. Roughly how many students get rejected? Well, most of them. We've got 193 places and we had 1,400 applications for home students last year. So there you go. You can work that out. Most students who apply will not get in. That's the way it works. There's not enough places. But you shouldn't be thinking that or worrying about that. If you are good enough, you'll be good enough. If don't think about how many get rejected. You just consider yourself, only worry about yourself, and you only need one offer from one medical school. So yeah, don't worry about how many get rejected. Just try and make sure that you're not one of them. You can reapply as many times as you like. It doesn't bother us. If you keep getting rejected, you've got to make a judgment call on whether or not it's ever going to happen. If you want to keep putting yourself through the process, that's up to you, but you have to have a think about that. Are people ever put on a waiting list? Yeah, we do a waiting list for students who just miss out interview, slightly below the cutoff, and occasionally we might go to that waiting list after A-level results, but there's no guarantees. If you are put on the waiting list post-interview, we will let you know and we'll explain the process to you. But the waiting list, more often than not, doesn't turn into anything other than a waiting list. It's very rarely we actually use that list to make any offers. Okay, last chance to write one last question. There are none in the box. Okay, we've been an hour, so that's about what I expect to do. Okay, I'm going to close the seminar, the webinar down. Thank you, Malahil, for joining us. Appreciate your time and your insights. We're getting a few thank you. So thank you, folks. Thank you for taking the time. If you need any more info, go onto our website. There's lots more info there. And if you're going to apply to BSMS for 2024 entry, best of luck. Thanks very much. Bye now.
Best of luck, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Rahel. Bye.